Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the World Electronic Sports Games. Of course, you are watching EndpointGG versus Fish123. My name is Flakes. Bear with me, I'm pretty damn tired at this point. It's been a very, very long day, but we thought we'd stick around with the helpful, wonderful MVP Sasha, who's being our producer for the night, who, well, hopefully with some pizza later on, we can get him to do this again sometime, as we are going to be covering the latter portion of this series. Unfortunately, we did miss the first map, but the second was relatively entertaining over on Cash, and we're now, thanks to the plays coming in, we've been forced over to our third. So Cobblestone is going to be the battlefield we are going to be witnessing. We've got a couple of, well, huge things that could come into play here, and looking exceptionally towards Fish, actually, on Cobblestone, because they've got a couple of players who I've seen play Cobble in the past, and, well, frankly put, they have been absolute beasts when it comes down to this map. And I've got to say, Cryptic's blatantly going to be one of them, Weber as well. So I'm kind of leaning towards Fish and going, well, they have a good advantage. On the flip side, Endpoint, they've got some players that are over. But either way, we are swinging into what will be our pistol round. Cryptic's to claim the life of the first round. Snake opening up the second. Aaron to find a third. A hat trick coming on in from 3 players apiece. Leaves Ezio and Philo in a bit of a predicament now. They've got themselves the Kevlar to play with, of course, so always potential to make this one work, and finding out a very much uphill battle. They will spam away a couple of shots. Philo getting rather dangerously low and eventually led to his death as Rattlesnake spamming on away. Ezio, the first man to actually find a frag from the CT perspective, but it's only 1, and unfortunately 1 doesn't equal 5, in case you didn't realize, which means that Ezio has to work absolutely cut out for him. It's pretty much just going to be running for the hills at this point. Best opportunity is just to try and hold that, which we can see him kind of following suit with. It is relatively smart, manages to actually do some damage. Gonna go up close and personal, going for the cheeky knife. It's not quite going to pay off, and actually runs out of ammo, which is a bit hilarious in itself. But either way, the end result doesn't really matter. Doesn't actually manage to save a rifle, so it does mean that Fish claimed that round in a pretty decisive manner, bear in mind as well. That was goddamn one-sided. The only player to actually do anything at all was Ezio, and finding 2 apiece in that sort of odds is, you know, great credit to him, but again, going back to the same of it being pretty damn meaningless at this point. Fish, they've got themselves the SMGs in play, very reliant on making themselves some sweet, sweet Skrilla. Going to be leading the charge, going aggressive. Won't actually be able to find the first as in taking down the CC. Goes for a second frag, which may have been a bit overzealous, but does some damage, enabling Philo to get the dunk on towards Weber. Aaron now going to be popping up with 2. Goes for the third. Rattlesnake there to aid him to find the fourth. And it means that Fish will walk away with a round, but this time it is much more impactful. Some huge damage being dished out by Endpoint. It's starting to really prove to Fish that, no, you can't run all over us. You will actually have to take this one relatively seriously. Well, for now, doesn't quite lean back to being able to run all over them, but they do just have these pistols, P250s galore, and this time around, pretty limited on the frag grenade department, because last time we saw them put 3 or 4 frag grenades to the table, which was a bit of a different play and relatively smart. However, the problem is this time their utility is exceptionally limited. They are just going to be saving for that buy round, and well, that 1 frag grenade will do quite a bit of spread damage. Pistols to follow through, that's a big ask in itself, as already they are just going to push on Aaron, still proving to be a bit unstoppable in the first portion of this map. They'll find himself 1 apiece. Ezio to find a second, so damage certainly being dished out to the table. Looking to see if Ezio can take it 1 step further and take down Weber, who is just kind of lingering on 1 HP. How long can he survive? Cryptic's over towards Chicken Coop. Seemingly, Ezio has his eye on him. Going to be making a beeline for the rifle. But Philo, he's 1 step ahead. He's already gained himself a rifle, and he's running for the hills over towards the A site. Going to be trying to see a bit of staying alive, you know, just loving life in the corner. And trying to really take that AK-47 into the 4th round. It's been a bit of an interesting couple of rounds. Fish have not really done anything too special. They've just been flat out aggressive on their T side. And of course, on the sort of perspective of Cobblestone, it is a T-sided map, I would say. It's an opportunity for you to really do some serious work in terms of just being flat out aggressive, not holding back. I mean, on Cobblestone is one of the maps that's actually relatively known for, you can make a 5-man push on B work practically pretty much half of a half. You can just constantly push out as a 5, use your flashbangs, and a CT side, they can adapt, but if you are just out-aiming them and outclassing them, it does fall into this kind of lopsided manner. I don't think that's quite going to be the case this time around, but it does kind of almost be a bit of an ode to the fact that Fish, if they do want to keep on going aggressive, this map is actually catered around that factor. As Endpoint, at least they get to respond this time around. They have the rifle aid in the back pocket of Max. They've got the ADP on Philo, and I did kind of look towards him quite a lot on Cash. I do look towards him here as well, but at the same time, if he doesn't really deliver, it's going to be very, very noticeable. Because Endpoint, they need some picks. They need something to work with, and if they can't find anything, do tend to look towards that AWPer and go, well, what are you doing here? Where's your impact being found? Pressure is going to begin to build up. A couple of flashes will be popped in Fish. They are just going to go a flat out aggressive follow to find the first. Going to be going for a bit of a repeat. Won't quite get on the second shot. Still just going to be repeaking after repeaking. Burns away in the flame. Rousing will cleanse him. But Aaron still going to be popping off in another round. Weber to find one of his own. Aaron still going to be trying to stay alive. Most importantly at this point. There's a couple of shots will be routed away from Rock, but he just wants to hold this angle, make sure that Ezio can't even get remote close. Flash will pop. Ezio will get the jump, so does manage to bring it back to a 2 versus 2. Has himself the Molotov, which could be somewhat usable, as they will try and catch Mole off guard, who's positioned up towards platform Imi to claim the life of Aaron, leaving him just on this one man. Mole, so much work to do, 2 players to find, both fully intact on HP. They've got themselves the kit. The peak will come in. He's looking to get free by the right one. Still going to be going for a long spray on battle. Still not quite finding Imi on the defuse. And a huge blunder being made. Mole not quite able to make it work, and does raise the question of when a bomb is planted in that sort of spot, how do you not know where the pre-fire spot is? Because it's relatively easy to kind of work it out, especially if you've got that kind of arithmetic game on point. But who knows? Endpoint, they got themselves a round to work with, an opportunity to use that as a platform to start building off of. Of course, rifles galore, and still that AWP in the hands of Farlow, who found that entry pick, which was a pretty crucial part of that round. Fish, on the other hand, a little bit more limited. They do have those 2 Tech 9s on Aaron and Mole, but I don't think that's going to be too impactful. It will kind of be a bit of a dampening effect. Rattlesnake going to go one-man aggressive for the site, finds himself a very nice one-tap on towards Philo, looking to take down Max as well, which would be an ideal way to open up this B site in terms of prying things open. And Max not even checking it. Max, what are you doing? That's a huge mistake to make. Handing another frag right into the back bucket of Rattlesnake, and suddenly these Tech 9s are ever so more apparent, because now they've been boosted in value. Of course, it is a stack pretty much over towards the A site. The minute Fish clock onto this factor, they are going to dart over to the hills, running towards the B site. And, well, the rotate coming in from the CT side is going to be pretty damn tragic. So this is just going to be one player to sell Aaron with the Tech 9, almost sacrificing his life, a sacrificial lamb, to say, making sure to keep the presence zone, wrap up a couple of shots, and even going to find a frag on towards Imi. Now leaving Velox to hold the angle, and Aaron is relatively low. He should be dead here, guaranteed. And normality will be restored. 4 versus 2 isn't completely off the cards, but always going to be safe. Mole just being able to do so much work, going to knock Velox down to 10 HP, before eventually his life will be claimed. Endpoint still going to be looking to take those 2 rifles through into the next round. Of course, Fish, they have quite a lot to work with, and most importantly, you look at the position in terms of comparison of Weber and Rattlesnake. Endpoint are basically being turned into a sandwich right now. They are just in a panini shop over in a downtown corner of a shop somewhere, and just being forced into a backhanded comment. Because there really is nothing they can do to respond to this one. Surprisingly, Rattlesnake hasn't quite pushed around the corner just yet, but they're going to kill him half the time. This could be brutal. But Ezio and Velox, they make it work and drop those T-set of players, and that's actually pretty damn painful to witness. But they will still come up trumps. Fish, 5 rifles spread across the board. No marksman pressure in terms of AWPs will be laid on down. Of course, you kind of gloss over towards the endpoint side of things and go, well, their economy is certainly going to be feeling it at this point, but it's still enough for them to squeeze on through and make it work. Of course, you do look towards this T side and go, well, what is your play here? How will you keep it up, and also kind of what is the game plan? Because going one-man aggressive like that isn't going to work, and Rattlesnake is going to prove that. Tries to repeat what he did on towards the B side, on towards A, and Ezio, well, he's just one step ahead. Of course, you do look at a bit of a damage tab being brought up. Why not at the end of the day? Something new and different. Sasha just experimenting in the ways of observing, and I've got to say, you have to give huge props to Sasha for sticking around. He's doing all the observing, everything on his own. There is no team here to support us this time around because we're sticking around, so do have to make sure you go show Sasha some love. We're swinging back to things. Fish, they've got themselves now 4 rifles off the back of the fact that Rattlesnake went for a bit of an aggressive push. Wasn't quite able to make it work. So Endpoint, they have a lot to work with, and considering Imi just has a CZ, it almost does nullify the value, but Imi's been a player that can do quite a lot, and especially now that Izio's just claimed the life of Cryptix. This is looking much, much better for the CT side to work with at this point. Weber, you'll be looking to push out towards long. Ezio just holding towards wood, looking to hold the angle. Claims the life of Aaron. The trade will come in from Weber, so a very smart push from the T side in terms of trying to bring in a bit of counterplay. It's just not quite going to be enough for Weber. Still just going to be tapping away, very, very confident in his one-taps as he makes them work. Imi now potentially going to be caught out, but Weber flicks on. And just Weber's just doing so much in terms of path right now, so dangerously confident, somehow making this work, brings it back. Mole to claim the life of Imi, and if Fish make this work, I'm going to be absolutely astounded how this is stuck out. There's Velox, 1 man remaining over to the board, keep one up, claims the life of Weber, and now he's just looking for Mole, 3 HP. Anything, even a nade at this point, There will be a bit of a pre-fire coming out from Moles. He will get an idea of where he's positioned, knocking Bilox down to a bit of a similar position. Now one shot, the flick is going to be supreme. Mole makes it work, clutches out the round for his team, and Fish123, ladies and gents, making it work at Endpoint. That is a disastrous round being brought to the table. That is absolutely ridiculous stuff. I have no words to describe right now. Some huge mistakes being made. Endpoint, you can't be allowing those sort of rounds to come on in, and I do feel where they're coming from a CT side perspective. They are a new team. There was a bit of a roster shuffle that took place. And some of you remember last week they had players such as Smooyer in the mix, which was a very talented roster, but they made some changes, and that is going to be a huge effect to their CT side. And one thing I do like about the team is they do seem to be kind of sitting with the aspect of it's going to take a while. For those mistakes, they still can't be happening, even just individually speaking. To barrel out on towards the site. Max will claim a bit of a commiseration frag with the USP. Velox managing to stay alive up towards Chicken Cubes has a huge opportunity to find himself a frag, but not only that, he could actually go for a knife here. It'd be very, very impactful, but it comes down to when he wants to bite the bullet. Is he's going to start tapping away, claims the life of Cryptics, goes for a second shot on towards Weber. This is great stuff coming out of Velox, looking to really make up for what his team did the round before. But unfortunately, it's only 2 frags, and that really isn't going to be a massive part in terms of the figment of the round. Now Fish, they still keep those 5 rifles intact, and purchased up and making sure they are just applying that reparation effect. On the flip side, you're looking at Endpoint. They've got them 5 rifles as well, so this is literally a perfect scenario for both of these teams. Pretty much equal footing. Rattlesnake, Philo, both low on kind of utility usage. Overall, this is going to be a real test of teams, and if Fish walk away with this one as well, we are starting to look at a very, very one-sided portion. Zezio going to be looking at the information work. We'll spot out the feet from Rattlesnake. Won't quite get it connected into him just yet, but he has the information, which is a huge factor in itself, as now they are just looking to barrel out on towards this site. They need to really land a couple of shots here as Philo going to fly on out. Claims the life of Mole. The second looks like it's going to be found onto the life of Weber, as Zezio tittering with the idea of going ever so aggressive. Philo just doing so much work, finds a second, making a third on towards Weber. Cryptics to claim the life of Philo, finally in return, but it's all just a little too late, as Zezio there to do the work on towards Cryptics. Immy to find another, as Aaron will fall. And Endpoint, they make it work, so make it much more contestable as they find their second. And Fish, unlike common scenarios where you'd expect Fish to be able to replay, they actually can't here, so they are limited back to these kind of almost pistol benchmarks. They could go for a bit of a force, mainly looking at Cryptics and Mole, but I think that would be, well, pretty damn crazy. So we are going to be seeing that one, which is much, much better and much more of a sane option. So it's just going to be 5 flat deagles, which is, hey, that's not something you see every single day. It does add a bit more of an entertaining element. We look to see how this one will unfold. Of course, a couple of deagle shots will just be spammed on away. Nothing really going to be happening just yet. We are just going to be waiting ever so patiently. Velox just going to be there, shoulder peeking on the angle. And I do like this fact, just playing Olaf Meister to its kind of full point. But still, very, very quiet round. You can almost just hear the ringing in your ears. There's really nothing going to be taking place, just a subtle weapon swaps coming in to add something new. The clock is going to begin to wind its way down. Fish just still being ever so precarious and ever so slow in just the way they clear out these angles. And eventually it will come on out. Velox to find the first Cryptics to connect the second in return. These Deagles now going to be looking to do some serious work. Weber to find another. This is looking very, very strong. Max will pick up a return frag nonetheless, but it's still a 3 versus 3. The HP of Max is looking like it could be extremely deadly. Philo to come on in, saving the day, finds himself 2, makes it a hat-trick, dropping the Deagles where they stand. I do think that is worthy of the nice shot. The Deagles actually did do some serious work. Weber and Cryptic certainly putting on a bit of a show as Endpoint claim it back to 3. But now we get to look back towards Fish, and as much as Endpoint took a very, very nice first map, the second map was I would say it was a little bit less close. And then when you look at Fish now, as much as it is a 6-3 scoreline, the way they got themselves to 6 was very, very lopsided. And now they have the rifles back on. I wouldn't be half surprised if we did see them claim their 7th, because they have been very, very aggressive, and Endpoint have been struggling to handle this just kind of uncontrollable aggression. And I do imagine if Fish fell back to a more pick-based style, it would actually be easier for Endpoint to handle. Whether that takes place or not is going to be a whole different ballpark figure. So patient there, Aaron and Ezio just so close to each other, standing on the tips of that smoke. Aaron looks like he's toying with the idea of going for a bit of a peek, which isn't really too ideal, especially now when he's just forced through the fire, but actually it works out for his failure. Claims the life of Ezio. Now he's swinging out, looking to take it one step further as Philo can do that, hold the angle with the M4, finds himself 1. He's already got past, and Weber going to come in from behind, just delivering a swift rifle shot to the lower portion of the body as Rattlesnake to claim the life of Immy. This is all but crumbling. As Endpoint left with just Velox and Max left standing. And what on earth can they possibly even do in this scenario? They've got themselves 2 M4s, but they're over on the B side. They are so far away. And at this point, it paints a very, very uncomfortable picture. The bomb is going to go down, just adding extra money for the Fish side in terms of what they can claim, and it is just going to be a flat save. So looking at this from that safe perspective, this is a good decision from Velox and Max, don't get me wrong, but they need to go together as a unit, be surgical in the way they position themselves, but most importantly, they could actually look for a significant amount of exits, because we are kind of getting the hint from Fish that they're actually going to be exiting through mid or through long, which, when you look at the position of Endpoint, they have a good opportunity to try and kind of set up and catch them off guard. However, it looks like they are just going to be going much more passively, relaxing a little, just over towards that toilet ankle, hiding in those blue boxes, per se, just to really buy their time. Terrorists win. Overall, now we look towards kind of Endpoint, because I did kind of almost expect to see Fish get their 7th, and it is almost a kind of a repetition effect, much like the words I'm using, much like the game. Whether Endpoint can actually start to really respond is a different figure in itself, because they do actually have the ability to keep on buying, something that Fish were struggling to do. But whether they can make the rounds actually count is a whole different ballpark figure, because just bear in mind that Fish, they haven't actually gone for anything too crazy. They're just relying on their shots and their aim, and Rattlesnake is just being such a force to be reckoned with. Stepped up twice now in this game, even got to open things up with a frag in this round, claiming the life of Philo, and it's just the impact this one man is creating, then backed up by Aaron, who's popping off at a mana himself towards the later portions of the rounds. Really so deadly as he goes to the first. Will eventually be trailed out by Ezio, but not before Cryptic's now set up, backed up by Rattlesnake, and Weber just there coming in from behind. And Weber is a pretty damn underrated player in terms of this lineup and the way he's been playing. But he's actually being extremely useful, because he's not necessarily being a forefront kind of entry fragger, but he's being right in the back market, supporting them, just making sure they don't get flanked from behind. As Velox will take the life of Mole. But it's still that same scenario, 2 rifles saving over towards those blue boxes. As Fish, they're going to get the rape. In comparison, Endpoint, 2 Enforcer save is all well and good. It's the same storyline as last round. They won't even get to save that. They will actually claim the life of Weber, who decides to go for the more ladder-based option, which won't really amount to too much. But it's still going to be pretty deadly. They could force up around these rifles. They have a bit of money starting to roll on in terms of kind of loss bonus and stuff, but it's not really going to be getting there just yet in terms of anything too impactful. So, you know, you're looking at $2,600 and the like. It's really nothing at all. They need a couple more rounds to really string it together before that loss bonus will actually really start to actually mean anything, because right now it is effectively pointless. So in the grand scheme of things, Endpoint, they're now giving away what could be their 9th round. They have to rely on Velox and Max to go absolutely huge. If those 2 players fail and they crumble, and we don't see any support coming from these pistols at all, then it is going to be that 9th round for Fish. If they get any more than that, we are starting to move away from what is an expected inside portion of this match. Because it's going to be going ever so aggressive. Drops Imi, drops Max. He's now just going to be on Velox to really be impactful. Looks like he's going to be just walking to his own grave as Weber going to spray him down. Small going to be securing the bomb plant. Velox and Ezio still ever so daintily wandering around, and it almost feels like we're going back to Velox saving again, which would be the 3rd round in a row now that he saved that M4, which is both a props to him and also just kind of a point in itself. As much as saving the M4 is going to be extremely valuable, just the lack of impact it's been having, it does make these rounds just that extra bit harder for his team to really squeeze on through. As Fish now almost certainly going to be getting on towards their 9th, and it does create that prospect of, well, how far are Fish willing to go on this first half? Of course, looks like Imi is actually going to be calling a bit of a pause, which I think is sensible for Endpoint at this stage. They know that this is an incredibly important match in the third. Dropping any more than 9 is kind of that go-to marker, saying, okay, well, you're creating a pretty bleak picture, so it is... We are kind of waiting for confirmation, but it is a tactical pause. Imi has done the job. He's confirmed it for us. Good guy, Imi. And at this point, it is a good opportunity for Endpoint just to sit back and talk things through. And at least from the observations we can make, it looks like the biggest problem for Endpoint is they can't handle this just aggression. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. They just aren't able to hold things down. Whereas in comparison, when kind of Fish play this almost pick-based style, they go individually together as a team and just kind of go for the longer range angles. Endpoint seem much stronger at handling things. And the irony is, it's almost kind of a hilarious observation. The sarcasm being made over pings and such, but you look at some of these players on the Fish side of things, they are just kind of hopping around the place, loving life. Rattlesnake, for example, has been a huge player throughout this series, and one thing that kind of sits in the back of my mind is how on earth he's been able to walk out on towards these sites single-handedly, considering we have just been stressing the idea that when Fish go single-handedly, they drop rounds. Then you add Rattlesnake into the mix. He's the kind of the anomaly within all of that, because he just walks on towards the A site, kills 3 players, and Endpoint just kind of sit in a bush, twiddling their thumbs without any ability to respond. That is a problem in Counter-Strike that shouldn't be happening, and it is something that you do kind of look towards these teams and go, well, you should be practicing this. And as much as I do want to see the CT side and say, well, they haven't really had too much time to practice the lineup, they've had enough time to make those individual mistakes. It will be a quick trade in this round as we swing back into things. Cryptics to claim the likes of Philo will be a 1-for-1. Endpoint have a lot more to work with in this round, and the pressure really starting to rack up on them. In terms of Fish, it will be Emmy to claim his life, so managed to go 3 versus 4 in their regard. Still an opportunity for some work to be dished out. Rattlesnake really not going to be going too huge this time around. This Cryptic's going to be falling, and looks like this pause may actually bear some dividends for Endpoint as they look to claim their 4th in a fairly wholehearted fashion. They don't really want to be taking too many losses. Of course, Philo fell very early on, but if they take any more, that wouldn't be too ideal. But of course, the priority does sit towards winning the round. It's going to be shoulder peeking off the angles, looking for Chicken Coop, which they really should be checking this angle. Max shouldn't be allowed too much of an opportunity to do some work, and if they don't face it, I really wouldn't be surprised if Max just waits to hear the bomb go down, then peeks and tries to go for the double kill on this, which you wouldn't be surprised how many times this happens, especially within kind of UK Counter-Strike and such. It's such a common mistake that I've witnessed from watching a lot of domestic sales. It's not even going to come out. Velox is going to do the job all on his own. Finds the pick onto the ground. It's not quite a double kill. He will actually find the frag on towards Max. He crosses over towards Rock, but Velox is actually going to do the job for him. Finds 2 apiece, so really stepping up to the plate in that round and brings them full circle to 4. Of course, for Endpoint, they aren't actually by all means out of the woods just yet. Fish, they can keep on buying. They've got themselves those 4 rifles. I'm expecting to see a 5th on the floor for Weber, which is going to be picked up. Would be a bit surprised if that wasn't the case. So overall, that's actually a relatively good, a lot for them to work with. In comparison to Endpoint, they are still going to be looking to claim a little bit more. They need the next 2, basically. I'd be disappointed if they get a 6-9, but it's been a good start from them. If they can keep up this style of play, start countering it, it would be great. As Ezio, we're trying to hold off this long range. Do the work. Imi, you really got to hit those. Eventually goes to the repeat, gets away with another life as he claims it on towards Mole. Should be very, very thankful that he got the opportunity to repeat, because now he gets to stay alive. Just played ever so passively, but look at them creeping up backwards, facing as he will just lean down towards Ramp. Velox now there to support him. As Weber ever so close for this peak, and the minute Velox does go for a bit of a rotate, it makes Imi's life suddenly much more capturable. As Weber won't actually be going for it, it's just going to be biding his time, playing it very, very patiently. Of course, Fish, they know that the best odds for them at this point are to try and find themselves a pick, and from there try and fight things back, which, if Weber makes this work, I'm going to be heavily surprised, as Imi will eventually take the elevated angle, catches them off guard. Now Cryptics and Aaron look like they're just going to be brambling towards this B site, trying to force a plant. And Philo, he is so aggressive on towards ramp in the grand scheme of things, in terms of this portion of the round. But this is almost just easy pickings. Finds the first, going to be going for the second anytime now if the push does come on in. And Aaron is practically just take a nice silver lead platter, put some food on it, and put a lot of effort into preparing it. As he will just get himself ready. Well, actually, land the flick, so huge credit to him for finding the shot. But he's in a 1 versus 3 at this point. The odds ever so not stacking in favor of HG Grenade will pop off, but he's 17 HP at this scenario. Really starting to run out of time. We'll just still spam away, utilizing every single second he has got, but 15 seconds, no time, no hope, and no life. So, 5 rounds on the board for Endpoint. Now they're just looking for 1 more. I mentioned that 6-9 was going to be where I wanted to see them. This is a lot for them to work with now. If they can keep on going, it would be huge. And you do kind of look towards Fish and go, well, you've let yourself go a little bit, because now not only can they not be squeezed together rifles, they are limited to just these Tech 9s, which is, you know, no disrespect to them. This is the best they can get. But this is pleasantly surprising. It's both a step up from Endpoint and a bit of a downgrade coming from Fish. There's a couple of mistakes and adaptation in style has kind of led to this point. And also, it does make kind of feel a little bit like Rattlesnake has gone just a bit quiet, which, whether that bodes to the fact that Fish have been relying on Rattlesnake just kind of popping on, almost like the Guardian effect, where they rather just go to Guardian, okay, well, you need to find these frags and then we'll do the work. Whatever sort of effect it is, right now it's not working as Fileho. It's going to be re-peeking after re-peeking, makes it to 3. This is absolutely insanity being brought to the table at this point. Fish just present themselves on a nice little golden tray, ready and waiting as Velox pick up the frag. Cryptic's eventually going to claim the last of Philo as he won't miss the shot, but it is just Cryptic's 28 HP. what on earth can he possibly do here? The odds, back to that statement of just ever so stacked against his favor, could be peeking so many angles. He's still just going to be rather fruitless at this point, and eventually he's going to find himself getting flat out dunked. So, a 9-6 scoreline. Fish on the leading portion, but it is still going to be that same portion nonetheless. So it is going to be what feels like potentially a bit of a pause. Just waiting for these players to get themselves nice and dandy. I think we're having a couple of net issues, perhaps. I'm not quite sure whether that's, you know, actually kind of existing, lost and the such. The pings look okay, in fairness. But I reckon Mole's experiencing a bit of loss or something along those lines. So it will be a bit of a subtle pause, which is, it's a lot for to work with. But in the meantime, it's just going to be that patience game. This is one of those periods where I would love to have a lot to talk about, but we had so much time during the map to really go into things that it actually, well, there isn't really much to say. So I don't know. Maybe Sasha can put on some lovely music for you guys during this one, so I can get an opportunity to grab a drink or something. Who knows? No, we're just gonna sit here and relax and enjoy the moment. As Mole is gonna be restarting his internet, so maybe this is an opportunity to kind of sit towards these players and kind of almost individually dissect what is going on. So I'm gonna kind of whip up a scoreboard for me right here. So just bear with me for a second. Okay, so I look towards kind of these players, and it is a couple of interesting players here and there. I mentioned Rattlesnake quite a lot, so I don't think I need to kind of drill into that one too much. Weber has been a pretty pinnacle player for Fish in terms of getting them started. Things haven't really kind of followed up, and for Endpoint on the other hand, I do feel like Philo is going to be one that really deserves to be kind of given the huge props for their ability to come back, especially with just how many rounds he was able to pop off with his AWP. The 3K towards the end was certainly one to be highlighted. Velox as well was one that was actually relatively quiet from what it felt like in the second map in comparison to the third. And whether that's just kind of naturally preference on map or what, it's better. Max is an interesting player in himself because Max is one of those players in consideration to every other UK player, you do look towards them and you go, okay, well, you have one of two choices with Max. He's either going to pop off and be this kind of insane young star player who's just doing so much work for his team, or he's just kind of relatively quiet, will pop off a couple of frags here and there, but it's nothing where you can kind of sit there and just kind of, well, not really do too much. He's able to find a couple of frags, and it may sound blunt, it may sound almost a bit kind of BM, but it's the truth. And in Max in this scenario, he's not necessarily having a great game. He's on a 0.66 rating, a 6-9 scoreline. Has done a bit here and there, but I wouldn't necessarily say a lot of those were impacts. There were a couple, by all means, that were him stepping up to the plate and delivering a couple of picks. Especially in consideration of the fact they've only managed to find 6. I wouldn't say it's terrible by a long shot, but considering what Max can do and the ability he can play at, I would say it's relatively quiet. It's relatively interesting actually looking at how these rounds did unfold as well, because we saw the pistol round being very, very quick for Endpoint and pretty much decisive as well. It was pretty damn great. They followed up with all 3 nice and cleanly. Then we saw Fish manage to clutch things out by the skin of their teeth to claim back a gun round. But then it was a swift upset. So Endpoint really had majority control of the economy, which is why Fish struggled to, off the back of losses, then able to rebuy. And we saw that actually take place in what was, I think, the 7th round? No, the 8th round. Where they took a loss and then couldn't afford to rebuy, which wasn't ideal at all. And from there, kind of put them back into that gutter, which I actually would have expected them to take it one step further and maybe even get to 10 or potentially even 11 if they actually managed to keep their economy in check. Because, you do look towards those pistols and say, well, as much as at times the pistols finding frags towards the rifle in the grand scheme of things is pretty meaningless, there were also times towards the later portion of the map where they were actually really important. And one thing that Endpoint have been doing really, really well is controlling those losses. So they've been making sure that they don't lose a whole ton while keeping it going. And you can kind of see that come full circle when you look at the frags and you look at the way things have unfolded in terms of the kill matrix. It really does kind of prove that one to a T. So we are just going to be waiting for Mole ever so patiently to get back into the server. Anytime now, Mole, would really appreciate it because my throat is kind of killing me right now. So would be good. I think with Rattlesnake as well, one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is actually just how kind of long he's been around the scene. He has been here for years and years and years, just right back to the early days of Source. He's got such a kind of a rich history as a player, and you can pretty much say a lot about a lot of these players. Imi, for example, is kind of a figurehead within the UK scene as being one of the most kind of, I will be honest, one of the most vocal players, but he's also one of the most talented players. Not necessarily kind of do feel like at times people underrate him as a player, but he's still there. And well, Ezio is pretty much on the same sort of boat. I'd say he's less vocal, much more kind of well kept as a person, but still kind of not necessarily a problem. It is just going to be them biding their time. I'm kind of interested to see whether there are any odds on this match. Just casual props to Sasha if you wanna bring them up, Sasha. In terms of the EGB odds, I don't know if they're even open or not. I'm assuming they usually are, because EGB being the premier betting platform, no sellout at all. No, I don't think we have any odds. I'm gonna double check, just because double checking is pretty good nowadays. I don't know where I would actually put the odds. I don't know. Looking at Endpoint, I think that they do have the worst end of the stick because of the roster changes. But I don't know. I feel like even taking the roster changes into account, they should have a relatively good opportunity to do a lot of work. With Fish, it does feel like the Rattlesnake factor has just done so much for them. Like, I think we'd all be lying to ourselves if we said that Rattlesnake hasn't quite literally single-handedly won them a couple of rounds. Like, he would just walk on towards the A site, done so much work. It's just not really been too apparent. But Mole, he's joined back to the server, so we can finally go back to some actual game time. So I can take a breather for a second, guys. It's nice and good. In terms of Mole, he's actually been relatively quiet as well. So I would say Mole and Max are kind of the two kind of pinnacle for a second in terms of players. I'm just gonna get a drink right now. Just give me a sec. I do feel like I have to stress the fact that this is, by all means, a bit of a dumbed-down cast. So if you were expecting the usual kind of professional casting content that we try and push out here, you're in the wrong place right now. It's just me staying late, trying to make sure we at least cover the latter portion. But either way, it is going to be Imi playing over towards drop zone. Velox going to be there, spamming all the way with the Glocks, and they got themselves out towards the site. And this is some great stuff coming from the D side. Velox and Philo claiming themselves a frag respectively. Imi to claim the life of Cryptic, who did pick up a frag just before that, but it's only going to be one. And unfortunately, arithmetic will tell you one is not quite going to be enough. This Fish on a huge back foot. Aaron, 5 HP. It looked like the knife was potentially even going to swing on in as Mole to claim the life of Imi. Aaron's still going to be looking to do some work respectively. They're trying to force their way out of the second room. It's Max ever so patient. Really things starting to slow down. Max now just going to be tithering around the edge. That bomb is going to be ticking on away. They need to be able to do something as Max now still just going to be spamming on away. Mole trying to do something. Tags him ever so daintily low. Still 5 HP as he will sit on 12 HP on Max. Max is going to play this peekaboo effect as now Mole going up close and personal. Takes the fight to him. But he's up against Ezio, who's over towards door on his own little island. He's pitched a tent, sitting there nice and patiently. Unfortunately for Mole, he's not quite there to burn that tent down. It's Ezio going to run from the hills, gets to stay alive. Mole, on the other hand, going to burn in the fire and the flames of the bomb. At Endpoint, they claim themselves the pistol round, so they bring it back. 7 rounds on the board now. Still 9 for Fish, but a huge opportunity for Endpoint to really force this map back into their hand. In terms of this round, I mean, it's a guaranteed force-up coming from Fish, which we can see come full circle. A lot of investment to be made. Deagles galore, 5-7s and such, so very much almost expected. A lot of opportunity for the CTs to do some work in terms of singling them off. However, then you look at Endpoint, 3 rifles, 2 UMPs. This is the perfect buy they need. This is everything they wanted in life right now. It's all been just Christmas come early. And it should give them a very nice opportunity to do some serious damage and also make some money. So I do kind of look towards Imi and Ezio, and as much as I'm not saying if they run into the rifles, don't get frags, not at all. What I am saying is I want the UMPs to position themselves appropriately into a scenario where the UMPs can make themselves some serious money. Because the UMPs making money right now for Endpoint is going to be a huge factor. I said before that Endpoint had great control of their economy. This is really starting to really sting on true, and I do kind of give the props to that on that regard, all to Imi, because he has been a huge player when it comes down to the calls so far for Endpoint. They might have had kind of a back foot in terms of the rounds they actually picked up, but their economy has been very huge and allowed them to get to 6. Well, now even 7 as Ezio going to hop on in, making himself some sweet scrolling. Life of Cryptics. Rattlesnake will find 1 apiece on towards Philo, but not before Max can come back to haunt, as then he can deliver a headshot on towards Aaron. And fortunately for Fish, their numbers are just going to begin to dwindle. Weber, just 100 HP, still nice and intact as he spams on away with the Deagle to claim the life of Ezio. Of course, the bomb has made its way down, so in terms of the CT side, they are just going to be looking to make a bit of a net gain in terms of what they can pick up. And the fact that Weber's got himself a UMP at this point pretty much means that if Weber doesn't go and save, I'm going to just call him out for being crazy at this point. And thankfully, he's going to, almost as if he can hear me, just going to be saving that UMP, bringing it in to what will be the 18th round as we get ever so close to the latter portions. Mole, he's got 5-7. I think off the back of the fact he's got Kit and got Kevlar as well as having the smoke will mean that he's also going to go for the save. And you also have to remember that as much as it may not be hugely valuable for him to save that, in the grand scheme of things, if he sticks by Weber, if someone pushes on in, Mole can basically just kind of dive on him front, almost as if a frag grenade has been dropped and he wants to kind of protect his teammates. He can just jump onto that nade and stop it from really inflicting too much damage. And if then nothing comes towards him, he also gets to save Kevlar on a Kit and smoke grenade, which is added value in itself. So now scoring getting ever so close, an 8-9 marker. A lot of potential for Endpoint to really make this comeback happen. Of course, the MAC-10 on Emmy being kept in play is pretty damn good. I'm a big fan of the MAC-10 in terms of this sort of scenario because you still look at the pistols on Fish. It's pretty damn bleak because Weber going to claim the first, making use of the UMP. And if you haven't quite realized, the fact that Weber has a UMP is, in terms of firepower, is actually great, but that's actually not the important factor at all. The biggest thing about Weber having a UMP is every single frag he finds, he makes himself some serious money, which actually makes it much more possible for his team to gain an AWP when Fish then go on to their buy round, which I would say they haven't really been favoring an AWP at all in terms of kind of the Fish perspective. I don't actually even recall who was even wielding it at one point. But it's money being made, and it's going to be hugely important for Fish. Anything they can scrape on through is important. But for the T side, it really is the same sort of narrative. They're peeking on out, but Mole will take him down. So it's going to be trades nonetheless. Back to a 3 versus 3. Unfortunately, Weber has kind of almost overthought things, as Velox is just going to hold the angle ever so patiently to take him down. That frag grenade could have been perfect. It's not quite going to lead to anything just yet. As Endpoint now going to be looking to barrel out on towards the site. Just a single one. Mole actually going to find himself another, looking for a second, but unfortunately Velox too quick on the trigger and too much control to stop that more from happening. As Endpoint now bring it back full circle. We are at a 9-9 scoreline, ladies and gents. As one of these teams, of course, is going to be getting through to the grand finals. And if you haven't quite realized, the grand finals are pretty damn important in the grand scheme of things. So I'll do a bit of a context check. But I'll do that context check when we go on to a team on their eco round, because we don't want to distract from the action that is this series. Of course, Fish, they do manage to squeeze up that AWP, which is going to be wielded by the hands of Rattlesnake. Of course, 5 rifles on the board of them, but a lot of potential for them to go just a Harden pass, thick, instead. Actually, hard just going to be falling one by one. Rattlesnake to find the first Cryptics, to find the second. Ezio going to be trying to throw a bit of a Molotov on towards tree, but makes a mess of things as it will just land on that tree position, which was not really ideal, as Emmy will claim himself a return frag on towards Weber. Not going to be too fruitful just yet, as Max now going to be popping off with a frag on towards Aaron, so making things much more contestable. Rattlesnake 6 HP as he does peek on around. Will led to his death by Max, who's going absolutely huge in this round. Ezio there to aid. Emmy finding a frag of his own. And a huge round being brought up. Max starting to wake on up, and that's going to be so impactful for Endpoint because now they've taken themselves a lead, and Fish, they are forced back to the depths of the coming round. So, context. I mentioned they would go into it. Now is going to be the opportunity because Fish, they have no money. They have been absolutely gutted, stripped down to bare bones basics. So, if you're not aware of what these teams are playing for, this is the, of course, World Electronic Sports Games, the UK, Ireland, and Iceland qualifiers. In terms of the qualifiers, we've actually had a pretty hilarious run, but huge props have to go to... I'm always going to double check the name because I don't want to call them WM, but War Monkeys have been a great Icelandic team. They've fought their way right through the qualifiers. They took down IGW, then followed up with a win over Vatic, then followed up with another win over Bulldog, which are a rising up-and-coming UK team. And they got themselves through to what will be the grand finales, which is taking place tomorrow, casted by myself and Tom, just after the EGB versus G2A, I believe, show match that will be taking place earlier on in the day. Of course, the team that this winner will be facing is it will either be Endpoint or Fish versus that War Monkey team. And themselves the regional finals taking place over in Kiev, where I find myself right now. And they get to compete for a good chunk of money. I believe it's about $200,000 or so here and there. So it's a good chunk. But most importantly, the top 8 teams at that event will get themselves the qualification slot to the WESG main events, which is 1.5 million, a lot of money up for grabs. And that is really the end goal here, of course, is to get $1.5 million is quite a lot. But in terms of this round, to bring it back full circle, it is just going to be these pistols trying to make something work from Fish. Endpoint, they've taken it very, very slowly to try to minimize all of their losses, so it's extremely smart when it comes down to economy management. Again, going to credit that to Emmy. Cryptics will at least find himself one, forcing the hand of Endpoint somewhat as he gains himself a UMP, but he shouldn't really be able to do anything else. The smoke will now go towards the door. It's going to be blinding him even further. But I think the best bet is to maybe even just save the UMP. He's not really going to be able to get up close and personal, take advantage of it. So the UMP gained for that 21st round will be, well, somewhat useful. So 11-9 scoreline. Endpoint starting to put on a bit of a show, but they're clawing things back, which is a point in itself. And it does make me think that maybe there's actually a serious opportunity for Endpoint to take a victory here, because over on the first map, I wasn't too impressed. The second map, sorry. The first map was great from them. It was very, very close. The second map, I actually just didn't really believe. I thought Fish had a very, very strong chance, and things weren't quite working out in their favor. So it was pretty damn shaky. In comparison, this is a much better showing, and a lot of it is coming down to just a couple of strategical elements, as Rattlesnake will find himself an entry. Philo to respond, making it a second as well. Rattlesnake coming back up, chumps the frag on towards Velox. Philo still going absolutely huge. Makes it to a 3 here. Now going to be playing for the ace almost, as he tries to hunt down Aaron and Mole, just ever so precariously holding that crosshair angle, waiting for the pushes to come on in. Aaron looks like he's having some serious thoughts about going for this one. Going to tag Philo down to just 41 HP. But they really feel like they can make this one work. It is a 2 versus 3 after all, so potential to find the frag certainly exists. But look at the position of Max. This is beautiful CS coming in from him. He's got himself just the perfect angle. Aaron was spurring out, claims the life of Philo, claims a second on towards Ezio. Somehow they're making this one work, but Max, he's still left standing. He spots up both the players, finds the first, going for the spray down on the second, but won't quite connect the shots on towards Mole. But he has to get on the bomb nice and quickly because the time is ever so close. Mole, he will make it work, finds himself the defuse. That was ridiculous. My heart goes out to Max at this point because that was so damn close, but he just made a mess of things when it comes down to the spray. That could have been absolutely huge. It would have been an insane round. But unfortunately, it's all just been a premonition. It's not quite followed on through. He didn't make it work, and Fish, now they're back on towards 10. At this point, it is looking pretty damn bleak. That round was so demotivating. It's such a shame. We look towards Fish in terms of their response now, because you have to remember that's actually a bit of a kind of response almost for them to try and play with. Time is going to begin to tick on down, and we aren't really seeing any faces come in just yet. It's going to be just fairly nice and apparent, nice and patiently overall, as they do just bide their time to really just make sure the clock ticks down. And I do like the fact that Endpoint are really just, you know, taking it nice and relaxed. It is exactly what needed to happen. Of course, it is just going to be an ever so patient standpoint being held from Fish as well. Both of these teams really not looking to face off in terms of sheer firepower just yet. Just really running the clock down to the wire as we get down to 55 seconds. And in terms of maneuverability, this is really good from Endpoint because they got themselves set up to gamble on towards that B site. If Rattlesnake wants to push, you know, any further, he could actually get some serious information, but he's not going to go for it. And now it does give Endpoint drop control, and they could push into a second room. A couple of flashes will be popped up. Griffin is going to push right into the crosshairs of Max, as now he gets some serious opportunity to pop up once again. Max, you failed the last time. Can you do the work this time around, as Mole going to be looking to step up and also looking similar success? Weber to find one of his own on towards Max. So Velox looking to fill his shoes. He will find himself 2 apiece. Imi going to be there to spam away, trying to potentially hunt down Rattlesnake. And when that comes down to the question of, well, how much is Rattlesnake willing to do, as he will name the life of Philo. Looking for now the second on towards Velox, and he's got the brainpower to realize exactly where Velox's position, forcing it to 1 versus 1 to Endpoint. You can't be playing this clutch like this. You should be playing together as a team. Rattlesnake, that jump was absolutely terrible because Imi gets a huge opportunity to information, goes for the pre-fire, lands all the shots. And as much as Rattlesnake might have been huge, I could see what he was going for. The flash was a great flash. But that far left, well, I just gave Imi the jump to find the shots, and that is almost just, again, another heartbreaking round, another clutch. Failed for Endpoint. Or the other way around, sorry, my bad. It's pretty damn tight. But still, that is... wow. Hoping that wasn't too loud. Did take my headset off, but who knows. Of course, swinging into this round, it is now going to be the 23rd round. Looking to see how things will swing. So far, relatively quiet once again. This time around, Endpoint aren't necessarily going as biased towards drop, which is going to be just another smart call for them. Keeping themselves well and truly held together in terms of 5 rifles across the board. And I do like that they're still playing it relatively slow against these pistols. I do feel like they should just kind of group up together and actually not kind of split up against these pistols. But at the same time, the right, they're still playing smart. It should be a clear-cut round. They pulled it off in the past, so it's not for me to judge how they play out these rounds. They are just going to be clearing out the angles ever so daintily. Weber looking to really find himself a headshot with a deal, and he does the job, claims the life of Velox. But it's still only one to be found. They need a couple more to really do some damage. Still, no peek gonna come on, and Max just gonna be biding his time. Another huge headshot coming from Weber, being an absolute monster with this deagle, because now that second frag has been found, it actually opens up the round for Fish, because the trading game suddenly becomes possible. At Endpoint left with just 3 players left standing. And with these pistols at a huge point to know, finding one is good, but finding 2 is really where things start to get serious. There's a whip through the life of Weber, flicks around and finds a frag on towards Aaron. Now going to be going for the continuous spray down, finds even the third on towards Cryptix. Won't quite be able to find the fourth for now, and Rattlesnake to pop out and claim the life of Ezio respectively. But this is a ridiculous round, absolutely haywire. And when now you look at the HP of Imi, if he gets caught out by Rattlesnake at this point, this could be disastrous. The Molotov will go down, being somewhat defensive. Mole will be there with the pistol, still biding his time. Doesn't have himself a gun, of course, so has to get up close and personal with a long-range shot. It's not going to be too ideal. Imi going to be there just hoping to line them up almost. Push is going to come, and they're going to line up for him. And actually, it's going to be Philo to claim the frag on towards Mole, but still going to line up nonetheless. At some point, get themselves one step closer. So an exceptionally close matchup coming from both of these teams, and it really is just almost get imperative to really stress just how close this one has been. I think this may be one of the closest matchups that we might get to witness throughout this qualifier. Of course, very excited still to see how the game up against War Monkeys will go, especially considering we don't necessarily get to see too much from Icelandic teams, as Weber now going to be looking for a little bit more. I really like what I saw from him with the Deagles in the previous round. Hoping he can repeat similar success with the M4 this time around, especially when you look at the fact that Fish are very much biased towards Famuses. But Endpoint, 3 rounds away from making it work. They're throwing everything against the wall, putting absolute maximum energy into this matchup, and it's really starting to show. Fish are starting to fall a little bit behind. It's just a couple of small things that really aren't working out for them. The clock worming its way down. It does feel like we just kind of almost get to this kind of repetition effect where both of these teams like to play so slowly that I actually think it kind of counters each other out, because the slow rounds, they're good and they run it down to the wire. But inevitably, what it actually means is now, because they are almost both teams try and do it and Fish don't really try and force their hand, it means that when Endpoint go for a plant, they're actually limiting themselves a lot of the time. So I kind of do lean towards maybe them biting the bullet at around 50 seconds instead of going for around 30, because it leaves them just, well, much more of a difficult scenario. But for now, they are just going to be living true to what they've been able to pull off so far. They've been able to make it stick. Cryptix will be looking to respond, but the Molotovs are going to be absolutely beautiful, but somehow they just don't check it. Cryptix is going to be doing so much work, finds himself too. Eventually will be traded out by Max, as he will pop off respectively. Mole now finding one of his own. Max to claim another life as he adds to the body count, bringing it back to a 1 versus 1. Aaron up against Mighty Max, but is he so mighty? Will he fall as he will be going for the bomb plant, gets it down, and gives an opportunity for Aaron now to take the one slowly but surely as he creeps on around from Rock. And he wants to clear out block. That's going to be his ideal here, because he knows that if he clears out block, then he has an opportunity to check chicken coop and then from platform over to there. And he's just going to be going around. This is such a good spot from him, just clearing it out, because even though Max was playing a bit of an off angle, you rarely see that angle actually being played in the clutch. The fact that Aaron went block just made it such an easy fight for him to take, and he's going to go for the, albeit long defuse, but he makes it work. 13 to 11. Where we find ourselves at Fish. They are starting to put up a bit more of a fight when it comes down to the rounds, as a huge clutch coming in terms of the 1 versus 1. But one thing to stress with Counter-Strike is that 1 versus 1s are good, and they do kind of add brawn to the overall match score. But 1 versus 1s aren't going to bring Fish back into this matchup just yet. They have a lot more work to do. 2 more rounds to find just to equalize things, and then 3 more to find the full-out or the win. And that's if things are as clear-cut as just a back-to-back win spree. So I do kind of stress the fact that Fish, they need to play together as a team, and they have showed a couple of energies, or a couple of problems, should I say, here and there, whether it's kind of leaning towards coordination as a team, whatever it may be. It certainly does sit towards a bit of an awkward one. Rattlesnake will have Molotov dropped at his feet, but is going to smoke it off. As they're just going to be peeking around platforms, seeing if Rattlesnake will actually decide to commit for a bit of a peek for himself. It's not quite going to be taking place just yet. It's actually really surprising to see him continue to go for this kind of slow-based play, because I do merit it, don't get me wrong, but it does feel like kind of both of these teams aren't really gaining anything from this. Because Fish, they aren't going aggressive, which I think is a good call, because Endpoint are quite literally just waiting for it. However, at the same time, if, say for example, Mole right now got boosted in towards drop, he could go huge, because Endpoint, they just aren't checking for it. They're almost so used to the fact that Fish won't go aggressive, that they're actually being kind of almost overconfident, which I think is both a good and a bad thing, because that overconfidence got them to 13, where they just trusted themselves. We saw Ezio and Max lots of times to step up to the plate. Whether it works out for them continually is, a different question. So far, so good as Cryptics. Wolves was great. Whoever going to be flying in from door. Mole will find one with the Famous, but sections low in terms of HP. Rattlesnake gonna fall. Mole's still just 9 HP left standing. Philo to find one straight through the door, looking for one step further as he claims a frag on towards Weber. Ezio to pick off Mole respectively. Aaron now has a lot of work to do. We've seen him pull off a clutch before, but can he do it again? This time going to be looking to clear up platform. Somehow doesn't see him. Is he just not using his eyes at this point? That is almost disastrous. Philo now given free roam over towards Olafmeister. This crossfire from Max is absolutely going to be deadly. Aaron gets himself some information to work with. A bit of a mess up coming in from the T-Set as well, because they also spotted him out. Will be extended, a bit of a shoulder peek to happen. Aaron finds the first now, and we're flicking for the second, but the bomb is going to be ticking on away. A smoke, a decoy, a nade is going to pop off as he just holds the angle. Max don't peek, but he goes to the peek. He's confident, trusts himself, finds the headshot, and makes it work. Kind of curious on how my voice sounds at this point, because I imagine it's pretty damn raspy. Like, I can feel kind of the desert building up in the back of my throat. So damn dry. But nonetheless, 14-11 scoreline. Felt like Max really just, well, had some huge cojones when it comes down to that round. Felt like it should not have worked out in any way, shape, or form. But he goes for it. And it bears some very, very nice dividends. It's now Endpoint just 2 rounds away, and realistically just 1, because these pistols, they shouldn't be able to do anything at all. They have just got bare-bones skeletal pistols, and from a skeletal round like this, we shouldn't be seeing too much at all. I wouldn't put it past Fish to try and have an impact. Of course, you always want to be trying to do the work. Weber, he popped off with 2 huge deagle shots. But it's not quite going to be doing too much just yet. Cryptics just going to be holding ever so patiently towards second room, and I like the kind of the adaptation coming from Fish. They are trying things, which is, from very much better in terms of a CT side perspective. However, unfortunately, whatever they're trying, it's not quite working out, and they're actually doing quite a lot in terms of the pistols towards the later portions of rounds, or at least they tend to be able to do them. Whether they actually are able to put this time around is going to be good. Weber just delivering a huge showing with a deagle, peeks out a drive-by onto a Dimmy. Molotovs, it's going to pop off. Velox actually deciding to drop down the fire onto his own pathway, and the other's going to be diving onto it. He's like Cryptics to spam on away and claim the life of Velox respectively. Mole's going to be looking to drop the bomb, finds himself a headshot. This is looking much, much better from the pistols. We warned that this could happen, and it's actually going to be paying some dividends. As now Philo just 15 HP max. Got a lot of pressure on his shoulders at this point, because Philo is almost guaranteed the fall is going to happen. Aaron gets swung around from the side, and Fish, they give themselves a lifeline. Now we look at Fish, and can they bring things back? It's a tough question. It's a very, very long, drawn-out question at that, but it is certainly possible. There's just 2 rounds in it. And you look at the economy, and by all means, it's not clear-cut, especially with the fact that Endpoint are almost guaranteed to be ecoing this. Investing too much into this would be almost insanity. But they're actually pretty confident in themselves, so a lot of money is going to be thrown towards the Tech 9s. Whether that's down to kind of an opinion or not, maybe they're just going to be going for the risk. I'm not sure whether it's down to the fact they're trusting in the fact that if they win this round, Fish get themselves to 13, then 14 is, they're more than happy to work with 14-14. Not quite sure. I didn't quite actually get an opinion on what their economy was pre-buy, so it is pretty damn rough. Too much either way, as Philo will find himself a quick headshot on towards Weber. They clearly have a game plan on how to pull things off. As Philo gets another frag on towards Cryptics. Fish, what on earth are you doing at this point? Aaron just spam on the way, claims the life of Velox effectively, flicks around, finds a second on towards Imi, but Ezio and Max picking up another frag with the Tech 9. Fish, you need to wake up because you're rapidly throwing this one away. This buy should not be working. Is it all down to one man, Rattlesnake, a 1 versus 3, or should I say Godsnake as some people refer to him as, but is he quite a god in this sort of scenario, 1 versus 3? He has to go for the save. It's almost guaranteed at this point. Endpoint, they're going to get themselves to series point. And there is no contest that could be made. The bomb is just going to tick on away. Rattlesnake, ever so patiently, going to be saving. Real nice and quiet this one. I'm just going to take the opportunity to grab another drink. I think with Fish right now, it's almost disheartening to win this because there are a couple of things they've done really, really well, and they did sell that. But then there are also a couple of times when they have just made disastrous mistakes and basically threw away any opportunity they had of making these comebacks happen. And that round is a prime example, right? We all got to witness it. Them just making a huge blunder in terms of being able to counter the Tech-9s. And it does just kind of present the picture of, well, just why Fish? What was the game plan there? You allowed yourself to be segregated. In terms of this round, they are going to be going for that kind of double-up setup on Rattlesnake and Mole, and this could actually be rather useful. However, Endpoint, they've been going uncontrollably aggressive, and the problem with a double-up setup is you have to claw some early picks. Late round, it's going to be a bit more tough to do some damage. Rattlesnake is going to go a bit aggressive. This could actually work out if he just ups the pace a little. As Aaron just right considering I think he will actually be able to connect the frag, so a good start. I really want to look at Rattlesnake right now and see what he can do, because he's ever so close to finding himself 3, but he was a little too slow as expected. He's going to drop right behind them though, so still impact that can be made. In terms of just this figment behind this aggressive push. Eventually gets going out, claims like Levia, Aaron looking to swing around and pick the life of Velox, connects a second on towards Max, and totally going to be adding up to his third. Now he's just playing for the fourth. They roughly have an idea of where far they're in position. He's still playing the life of Aaron nonetheless, but Cryptic's quick to trade things back. Fish. They claim it back to 13. So it's actually, their name is kind of almost ironic at this point, Fish for life, right? Because they actually want almost just an ability to kind of just breathe for a second. Because Endpoint, they are constantly mounting the pressure on. You see right now, for example, as much as this is a valid thing for their economy, they would be guaranteed to be doing this in any matchup. Just the fact they've got those Tech-9s, they've got some Kevlar in play, and just off the rounds we have witnessed, it means that Fish, they don't even get any breathing room. They don't get an opportunity to sit back and relax. Off the basis, they have to even just be paranoid about the basics of things. And in terms of these Tech-9s this time around, they are just looking to barrel out on towards the A site. Still no response being made. Aaron needs to do something, but he's going to miss every single shot practically. Still not finding a single frag. Aaron, hello, where are you? As Violet will claim the first, Max to claim the second. Cryptic's the only man to do some damage. Now this could have all just crumbled as Aaron was unable to make anything work, but Cryptic's is going to step up the plate, finds himself a dunk, backed up by a second frag on towards Ezio. Doing it all down to Emmy. He's got himself that Tech-9 still. Going to be flinging them around, trying to almost just dance the dance. But yeah, so low at this point, and feels like Cryptic's alone finding that 3K. This round might finally be clawed back into favor of Fish. As Emmy is going to be having to retreat back to the site, go for the plant, and the plant at this point is pretty damn important, because it will aid them in terms of their economy. That's just 6 HP. Bomb is down, as we mentioned. He's going to be ticking on away. That flash could be rather nice in terms of going for the 1 versus 1s. Won't actually be able to find himself a frag. They'd lined up for him! But thankfully, Cryptic's is going to be living on a bit of a prayer, but he makes it work. Finds himself the frag. Or the frag, should I say. No need for the extra pronunciation. Not sure why that took place, but hey, 1 HP on Cryptic's. Ridiculous round coming on out, and I do kind of look towards Fish and go, you basically nearly just threw the match. That's what we've just witnessed. Fish nearly threw it all away off the basis of some huge mistakes. Aaron not only missing some shots pre-blind, but then finds himself then getting blind, unable to do anything further than that, and from there it just crumbles to pieces. Now we do kind of look to this almost penultimate round. It's either going to be overtime, Endpoint walking away with a series win, and Rattlesnake just going ever so aggressive, gets himself some information to work with, retreats for his life, keep it nice and intact. Violet just going to be holding the angle with the ADP, looking for a bit of a pick. Mole is going to go for a bit of a peek, but won't actually be able to claim anything just yet until eventually he does go for the shoulder to the right. Picks himself over a frag. So a 1-man advantage already sitting to the court of Fish. Oh, just going to be now dancing, looking for even a repeak, which is just so complicated because the flash from Ezio actually all it does is blind himself. The smoke is going to go down to act as a bit of a shroud. But even then, in the grand scheme of things, it's already just so much information for them to work with. They're coming up to a minute on the board. This P90 from Weber could do some hilarious but impactful moments as he's going to spam on away. Won't actually be able to find anything just yet. The nade is going to pop off the smoke, even to go down. Just basically, from the Fish perspective, trying to put Endpoint in a box, forcing them basically have nowhere to run. And I would like to see someone who's not 6 HP holding off window, because there is a huge opportunity for Fish just to kind of dart on out. And this is actually relatively smart. They're going to be going for a bit of a counter boost. They want to get Velox and Max out of drop, up towards the back of B platform, and potentially have another opportunity to try and force something back into their favor. So it is a smart play, but then on the same time does leave Imi on a bit of a kind of an island to do it all on his own and basically just hold the angle. But if he can play as an almost distraction element, distract Weber and Cryptic's thinking there are more than actually meets the eye, it could be huge. As Ezio will claim himself a headshot on towards Mole, Cryptic's to fight back with a trade frag respectively. Max to claim another. Weber finally going to be doing some work with the P90, so we'll claim the life of Imi. 2 versus 3, and Aaron's still just taking low, but Weber still caught in a bit of a position to do something. I'm surprised they're not really contesting this bomb plant just yet, as Weber is just going to be looking to play the trading game with his team. They have the man advantage, of course. They don't want to be choking this one away as Rattlesnake swings around, finds the first, makes it a second. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to overtime. In terms of overtime, I don't actually know who I want to hedge my bets on here, because Endpoint had a very, very nice start, and there were a couple of rounds that were perfect, but then there were a couple of rounds where Fish just stepped up bigger, and also Rattlesnake just kind of appeared out of nowhere and clawed 2 or even a 3k out. But then there were also rounds on the Fish perspective where I just go, how did you nearly choke those rounds? How did you nearly mess up some of those clutches? Because they quite easily could have lost this 2 or 3 rounds ago. Multiple times. Either way, this is a huge opportunity for both of these teams to basically take all of their issues, throw it in a sack and just kind of throw it in the bin somewhere and just take a second to refresh. Because if they can almost just take this mental reset, as much as I don't really want them to change their play up too much, it gives them an opportunity just to kind of not try and repeat similar mistakes. And I think it is especially important for Fish, because as much as it is almost railing on them at this point, it is hugely important to mention the fact that they have made so many fatal mistakes, much more than Endpoint have. But the mistakes that Endpoint have made weren't exactly game-losing mistakes, whereas Fish, they were just clutches that down to communication areas and things along those lines. But either way, we are swinging to overtime. It is, of course, going to be MR3 10k, so a short and stint version of overtime as Cryptics. We're going to find ourselves one as SEO deciding, today's the day that I burn in the flames. Fire it. Maybe there to pick off Rattlesnake, so a quick trade nonetheless. There's going to be a bit of a push coming out on towards his site, and no response being made. Philo going absolutely huge right now, being a monster as he flicks on towards Aaron, finds himself 3 frags respectively, leaving just Weber and Mole on an island all on their own. They're over towards drop zone, going to be trying to push on out. Mole trying to make the best situation out of this. But it's going to be a pretty tough one for them to claw back. There's a bomb going to be ticking on away, and we are seeing the save come out from Fish, which is expected at this point, due to the fact that A, it's a 2 versus 4 on towards that B site. They know the alpha plants are pretty damn brutal. But B, 10k MR3 does not favor a scenario where you've bought up an ADP, you bought up quite a lot of utility and such, and then you lose rounds in that sort of fashion. So the best thing to do is just keep as much as you can intact. In terms of damage as well, it's much more valuable. So Fish, they claim themselves a bit of a brutal end, but they do claim themselves the ADP, just kept in the hands of Mole, which will mean their economy is somewhat intact. But you can see the trail of thought that I was getting at. Aaron, we've basically got nothing to invest now at all, just right down to $0. The rest of the players, they have quite a bit, and Weber is actually going to be a bit of a pinnacle factor in terms of drops. Endpoint, on the other hand, relatively well held together off the back of they've won that round, which is kind of expected. The losses were minimal, but they were impacted as Imi fell towards the end. Already a bit of damage will be done by the frag grenades. Certainly going to be a B-side. They also find himself a quick headshot. Will be traded by Cryptics and just find himself one apiece as Mole whipping out the pistol will make it work as well. So almost a bit of insult to injury. He does the damage as now a flash will be popped on, even more aggressive as Aaron to claim the life of Imi. Let's see what he can deliver, which is flat out nothing as Max is going to be somewhat blind. But when it comes out of that kind of stint, you will actually be able to make something work, as it is a 2 versus 2, and this is a 2 versus 2 that by all means this CT side should be trying to go for, as Aaron going to be looking to creep on around. He has himself something work, as it will be a quick 1-for-1 trade, but Weber 8 HP right on the brink of death. So he's just going to be creeping on around with this M4, trying to make this one stick for his team. Looking for that 16-16, the smoke could fade at the worst time for Velox, by the skin of his teeth he pulls on through. Now, Weber has no idea where Velox is positioning himself. Velox is playing this time so well. Weber could just backstab him completely, but is there going to be time? Should be able to pull this one off with the kit, but just a couple more seconds being bought by Velox would have made that ever so close. But right down to the wire, a couple of seconds in it. Fish, they make it work, bring it back full circle to 16-16. Of course, 16-16 is pretty damn good in the grand scheme of things in terms of overtime. A lot of potential for either of these teams to really try and edge things ahead, and kind of do look towards Fish actually, because as much as they made some mistakes, they do look somewhat more composed on their CT side of things. So it is a bit of an interesting element in itself. They have taken a lot of heavy losses when it comes down to this aggression, which we are seeing come full circle, but Cryptics is being an absolute beast when it comes down to pinning things off. Finds himself 3, just tapping away, looking for a potential even 4th now. Imi, looking for the trade frag, will eventually claw things back. Something for them to work on and hold. Endpoint to try and break out of it. So down by Aaron at this point, leaving Max hang out to dry. as Fish. It's going to be 17-16, favouring Fish, of course, a team that have been on a bit of a seesaw kind of ride when it comes down to things, but it is a huge opportunity for them now to try and claim this game before we get too far ahead of ourselves. I almost feel bad for you guys at some point, because this is it's getting pretty damn rough. Looping some words here and there. I think I've actually slurred a couple, so you have to bear with me. But it's been a bit of an exciting game, and I'm certainly pleased that we actually got to witness this one, because we wouldn't have actually been able to see this. We were just relying on GoTV for this one. We just didn't have the time in the schedule, unfortunately. As if you aren't aware, we're doing a whole host of qualifiers. We did Ukraine, Russia today in terms of their semi-finals and such. So it has been a pretty packed schedule. So we were only actually going to be covering the grand finale of the UK, which will be taking place tomorrow night, casted by myself and Tom, which should be back to a much more professional kind of desk vibe. I think we'll have the desk tomorrow, depending on if Gfinity is taking place in terms of timings. But either way, to bring it back full circle, 16-17 as previously mentioned, looking to see whether Fish can follow up with a similar performance on their T side as done on their CT side. It will be a shot already going to be missed with the AWP. A lot of pressure being taken place over towards long. Ezio just sitting on the edges of that smoke. Nothing really going to be taking place as Rattlesnake and Co just all going to be bunched up together nicely. Endpoint really not making too much movement, and leaving Ezio almost on an island on his own is pretty damn risky, so I'm glad they've left Imi there to be this almost supporting act with the AWP. I do like the fact that Ezio's on this boost. It does kind of raise the prompt who, sorry, not who, will Fish actually kind of spot this one out if they do go for a bit of an A push? I do think that would be kind of a rather impactful point in itself, whether they just go for that shot. I would say that it's not necessarily the most expected angle in the grand scheme of things, but it's an elevated angle that can do so much work. And if Ezio also does the 90-degree swing behind him, or the 180-degree swing at that, depending on which angle he wants to go for, and depending on how far they are pushed up, there's a lot of opportunity for him to go absolutely huge. But at the same time, you can kind of do the counterplay element of Rattlesnake. If he pushes up through long, it's a very easy angle to see from long, because you're basically sitting right in there, just almost in the pre-aim. Long as now very much going to be looking towards Rattlesnake. Find himself the first. Ezio going to be there. He just swings it around so much damage. Won't actually quite be able to connect the second frag, but it really opened things up. An opportunity for the CT side to retake things, even though it is a 2 versus 4. You have to look at the HP of Rattlesnake and Cryptics. Dangerously low, right on the edge. But most importantly, you still have to look towards Fish as well, because they've got themselves the bomb plant. And Endpoint, they're not even going to go for this one. They are backing off at this point, which means they are cutting this one right down to the wire. Fish, 18 rounds up. It's going to come really right down to that last pinnacle round as we potentially maybe about to crown semi-finalist winners in this third map, of course. And going to overtime is probably the best way to dish things out. Of course, Philo is going to claim himself one frag, unfortunately, after the departure of his teammate. So the save is going to be limited, even more so to the fact that he will fall to Rattlesnake, who goes aggressive, backed up by Aaron, just kind of following tag in behind. But now, as mentioned, this is it for Fish. This is their one opportunity to finally hammer that nail into the coffin, and we are seeing a pause come on out, and Aaron, he's utilizing the tactical pause, and this is, you have two sides of the coin in this sort of moment. You have the kind of, the coin of Fish, you have momentum, you've just snapped the momentum completely in half, so any opportunity for them to really utilize that has just been tossed aside. However, on the upside, they actually get to now take a second to really plan out their play. And if they can make things, pitch perfect, really just do 100% execute as a team, well, this is all they need. They just one cheese round, one quick strategy that will work out in their favor. In comparison, if they make even a small subtle mistake and Endpoint start to utilize that, off the back of the momentum also being lost, Endpoint really have an opportunity now to grind back a couple of rounds, and from there we could be going straight into our second overtime, potentially even our third, and start that slew of back-to-back overtimes, which we have seen in the past. I wouldn't say it's completely off the cards. Certainly it's possible. Nonetheless, we are going to be looking to see what will come out to play. Very much excited to see what sort of calls have been made for Fish, because they have a lot of options, but they could just go flat 5-man aggressive out on the B site. Frankly, put that as a cheese round that has worked for them in the past. They are actually slowing things down somewhat, so it makes me think they have a game plan. Potentially, judging from their positions, they are going to be looking towards their B site. Whether they're putting any pressure on towards drop is a question in itself, as a couple of shots will be exchanged. And I kind of am thinking right now, maybe if they smoke off the left side of drop and actually just go for a 5-man waterfall cheese straight through window, because they will be able to catch Velox off guard. From there, swing on, try and find Imi, who will be able to find one with the AWP. That's the pick probably guaranteed. But one, in the grand scheme of things, is not going to be too huge, especially with the fact that Fish would then have an opportunity to play the trading game, get themselves on towards the A site, and from there will ultimately just force Endpoint into a bit of a dodgy retake. Doesn't look like they are going to be doing that one just yet. They are just going to be biding their time, and actually looks like whoever's toying with the idea of dropping a smoke to the right side of Connector is almost guaranteeing that we are indeed going to be heading towards that B site. So an opportunity for Endpoint to show if they can step up Fusion. Well, I'm looking towards Max with the AWP to put some pressure on towards B platform. So far, he's done absolutely nothing as Aaron, in the first life, will be finally responsible for Max and Philo, but Rattlesnake and Weber picking up 2 respectively. A trading game is going to be on point, leaving just Imi and Ezio to rotate in from Connector, playing for pretty much everything. As they need to make this one work, because the bomb is going to make its way down. They have 40 seconds, they have that window to get on towards the site. A smoke and a flash is going to be popped. Relatively smart for Ezio in terms of getting himself an area to work with. So far, so good as Imi playing the life of Rattlesnake, bringing it back to a 2 versus 2. Weber and Cryptix still left standing. And some smart decisions in terms of the spots they are holding as Cryptix going to peek out, finds himself the headshot on towards Ezio. Imi going to be left in a bit of an island. 2 players to find. So many angles to check, goes up close and personal, but it's not going to happen. It's 19-16. Congratulations to Fish. They are going to be the winner of this BO3, and most importantly, heading over towards the grand finale, where they will be up against the warmongering side. The Icelandic side of that will be putting on a show for us tomorrow. As of course, we will be jumping on towards the grand finale right after our show match between EGB and G2A. And